Hello Year 10s and welcome to Lesson 7, looking at the Weimar Republic. And the inquiry question for today's lesson is, was 1924 to 29 really the golden age of the Weimar Republic? At the end of last lesson I showed you these images and they kind of represent different elements, different areas of this new golden age. But what is a golden age? Well, a golden age is a period during which a very high level of achievement is reached, especially in particular fields of activity, so areas of the society, art, literature, politics, freedoms. All these things are connected to make something a golden age, something which is very, very good. Again, just a little overview of where we're at and what we're going to do today. So you can highlight all of this, we've done it. You can highlight all of this, we've done it. This is what you did last lesson and the lesson before, and we're literally going to do this tiny little bit down here. And then we completely finished key topic 1, the Weimar Republic 18 to 29. So we're going to finish off perfectly for this term before summer break. Now, the one you just downloaded for today looks like this, because remember this you just downloaded once in lesson 1 and you kind of highlight it as we go. So lesson 7, this is what we're looking at. This bit up here is what I've just read out to you. It's this bit here. Okay, so the political and economic issues of the 20s, so think 1923, the crisis year, the left and right uprisings, the Kaput, the Spartacists, all of that had actually been resolved or began to be resolved, and Germany found itself right in the centre of this kind of cultural explosion, especially around art and cinema, architecture as well. And the thing to note is under the Kaiser, Germany was strictly controlled, so everything was censored. That meant that you couldn't just say what you wanted or print what you wanted or do what you wanted. Under this new republic, you had the Bill of Rights that allowed freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. It guaranteed the rights for women. And the result was what's known as the Weimar culture. And you're going to look at that today and make a decision yourself about why historians see this as a particular golden age for the Weimar Republic, and make a decision if you fully agree with that as an idea. Now I'm just going to show you 2 pictures because I just think they're amazing. And this is the kind of things that people started to express. So this is a guy called Otto Dix, and this is called Stormtroopers Advancing Under Gas, and it was painted in 1924. So it's quite a harrowing and dark image, I think you would agree. But again, it's the kind of new expression that people felt free to do. You wouldn't have been able to do kind of this kind of stuff before. And when the Nazis come, this is the kind of thing they really attack. And this is another one, Wounded Soldier. And again, quite a dark and harrowing image, I think you'd agree. But again, it's kind of indicative of this freedom of expression that people found they had under the new Weimar Republic. Right, so we're going to go on to our first task. And before we do that, I want you just to note one thing. The final task is going to be this here. It's a 12 marker, and you're going to explain why the years 1924 to 29 are known as the golden age of the Weimar Republic. So you're going to need kind of 3 paragraphs. So as we go through, always have that in the back of your mind, that that's what you're going to have to answer. That's what all the information you're getting is information that's going to help you answer that question. Okay, first task. This is all about answering a simple sub-question. Was it a golden age for women? Was this a very good period for women? You're going to read through the information. You need 2 colours. I've gone for green and red. And you're going to highlight bits of information, specific factual detail that either supports that it was a golden age for women or challenges it. says that no, it wasn't a golden age. So, colour code, I would put green here, red here. You're going to read through and highlight all the evidence that says, yes, it was a golden age for women, and see if you can find anything that says, no, it wasn't a golden age for women. As always, I want you to pause the video now, give it a go. I'm really pleased to hear that many of you are doing this. It's really important that you kind of have a go yourself first. So pause the video now and give it a go. Okay, brilliant. So for those of you who want to have a little bit of guidance, as always, I've done a few for you. And this is a couple done for you. So colour that supports it, so the green. Well, marriage was an equal partnership, so women weren't kind of subordinate. It wasn't like the man was in charge anymore. So marriage became an equal partnership. Now you can see I haven't highlighted this one. Women were less interested in family and more interested in having a good time. Because I don't know if we can make a judgment call about that. That's for you to decide. Now, does that show that women had more freedom? Or does that show that women weren't kind of shown the respect, or motherhood wasn't valued as much? It's for you to decide, because it's a tricky one. If you don't want to make a decision, don't worry, but have a little think about what you think. Does that show that it was a good thing or a bad thing? Now, in the Constitution, Article 109, so that's, remember, the kind of the rules of how the country is going to be run, stated that women had equal rights with men and could enter professions on an equal basis. So that's about equality. So I'm saying that's a good thing. It's a golden age for women. Now this one, some men accepted the changing roles for men, so you might want to put that in green. It's up to you. However, others thought that the changes were inappropriate. There were some men who even thought that these new women threatened the role of men in society. So I put that as a negative, because that just shows that even though women were getting these freedoms, there was lots of men out there who resented it. So they weren't, the law might have said they were equal, but maybe lots of men didn't agree. So men hadn't been convinced, or many men hadn't been convinced yet. Once again, you've had a little bit of help. If you now feel a little bit more confident about what you're doing, pause the video now. Brill. I'm going to move on and I'll show you a few more that I've done. So here's the rest I've done. And interestingly, few women actually secured high status jobs, but increase in part-time work instead. So they could go into any profession they wanted, but the reality was few did. Men didn't employ them. Behaviour of these new women was not liked by some men, so it's a bit what we said here, and women. Some women also felt it kind of went against their traditional values. So there was kind of animosity. People didn't like it. Again, I've left this one, conservatives and traditionalists, so right wing, remember our political spectrum, right and left, they complained loudly that women should concentrate on being mothers and wives and not challenge the male-dominated society. I haven't highlighted that because I want to pose a kind of a question here. You might think that's a negative thing, that that's a challenge is the statement because they were being kind of argued, people really didn't like it. However, you might think, well, it shows that they had freedom, because if people are worried about this freedom, it means they had it. So if they're worried that their male-dominated society is being threatened, it must mean that women had the ability to threaten it, which shows they had power and they had kind of authority. So I can see that as both ways. It's for you to make a judgment about which way you want to go. Hey, women in the vote, it's a good thing. Teaching and medicine offered new opportunities for women, so they were had new opportunities. Greater earning power led to more independence, especially for younger and single women. Most women gave up work though after they got married, so all great, you had all this freedom, but as soon as you got married, the vast majority of women simply gave up work and kind of became mothers all over again. So had they actually gained much? Some women felt liberated by these new opportunities and freedoms, so that's good. But other women found the expectations that they should change a scary or daunting challenge. So the idea that you had to do this, you had to be bold, you had to go out and get jobs, you had to take all this freedom. Many women actually found this new freedom, scary. They weren't sure how to cope with it because it was so new to them. But women were encouraged to go to university. That's a great thing. Again, I've left this one because it's similar to this. Some people blamed economic instability on these women, but that just says to me it's a bad thing because people were annoyed at them. But is it a good thing because it shows that they did have this freedom to go out into the labour market? Again, I think there's a debate to be had there. So if you want to just take these down, again, I really would like you to do it yourself first and then just use these to check and to kind of reassure yourself you're on the right track. But again, if you want to take these down, pause the video. There's a couple you're going to have to make your own choices on. Good, we're going to move on. Right, so this now should all be highlighted, or most of it. And you should start being able to think, on average, on balance, are you feeling that it was a golden age for women, that life was better for women or not? It certainly wasn't 100%, was it? Perfect, but have a little think. We're now going to go on to the next section, so the next task, task 2. And this is looking at workers. So we looked at women, the place of women. Now we're going to look at the workers, so the people who are like out employed, working in the factories and the shops, all of those kind of things, teachers, builders, whatever. People who are unemployed as well, pensioners. Now this is slightly different. It's similar but slightly different. You have to read the information below and highlight the evidence that you think best supports the statement above that it was a golden age for workers. Okay, so what do you think best, because you can't highlight all of it, what do you think best supports it? If you had to choose a couple of bits of information for an exam question, which bits would you really like to remember, basically? That's what we're trying to get to. Basically, it says that here, remember to highlight specific factual details, so FD, that would help answer an exam question. Remember, that's where we're going at the end of this lesson. Now, there is an extension, so you don't all have to do this. The extension is to see if you can find and highlight any evidence that challenges the statement that says it wasn't a golden age for workers. Okay? But that's an extension. The main bit I want you to do is to find all the good nuggets of information that's going to help answer that question. Remember, you can't highlight all of it. The key thing is to try and highlight just the bits you need. So you've got this bit here. You can see the pictures to kind of help you. You've got money there, and employment, insurance, help. So employment insurance is like helping people, happiness, housing, and other improvements like education and other things. Now your job is to take a bit of information from each of these sections and highlight the nuggets of information that you think best support the evidence that there was a golden age for workers. Now pause the video now if you want to do this totally by yourself. Remember, you can't highlight everything, so try and pick wisely. If you want to have a little bit of guidance, the next slide shows you a little bit about what I've done. So pause the video if you want to do this totally by yourself. The rest of us will move on. Okay, so I've just done a little bit here for you. This is the stuff I've just taken that I think really supports and gives evidence to it was a golden age. So 1924, over 4% of the total workforce was unemployed. By 1928, it had gone to 2.15. So that's virtually halved. So in that 4 years, unemployment has gone down by half. That's a massive improvement. Now, that's all I've highlighted. You could highlight a tiny bit more if you wanted to, but for me, that's the big takeaway. That's the big bit of information that helps support it. And employment insurance, so again, you could write all this down if you wanted, but really the main thing is 60 marks per week in unemployment and sickness benefit if they fell out of work. So that just tells me that if you become unemployed, you now get help, a little bit like our work, our benefits and employment benefits. That's a massive improvement from the crisis year 1923 where people were starving. this is at least some help. Okay, work and wages. You know, there's lots of details here and percentages, but the big take home away is this. Average workers, some of the highest paid in Europe. So in Germany, the average worker was one of the most highly paid across the whole of Europe. That just shows how well things are going. Again, if you want to highlight a little bit more, that's great. Housing. Again, I've just chosen a few little nuggets of information. Private building companies built 37,000 new homes. Associations built 64,000 new homes. So it's showing that there's lots of homes being made. Pause this video if you want to have a go on that last section. Really recommend you do at least something yourself. Good. Now we're going to move on, so make sure you've done something. This is the final little bits of information I've taken down. Pension law helped war veterans. I haven't taken down the numbers there. You could if you wanted to, but that's the big takeaway for me, that there was help for these war veterans and education improved. That's another big takeaway bit of information. Now, the extension, if you want to have a go at it, is can you find anything that challenges the statement that says things weren't all rosy for the workers? And there were some things which hadn't improved that much. So pause the video now, get a new colour, get a red or another colour, and see if you can find anything that challenges that statement. Okay, pause the video now. Okay, I'm going to move on and show you what I've done. So I've just found two sort of things here that's jumped out at me. Unemployment remained high for those in professions such as lawyers, civil servants and teachers. So yes, unemployment fell, almost halved. But not everyone benefited, and those kind of higher professions, lawyers and stuff, they remained in quite bad situation. And then down here in housing, yes, they built all these houses, but there was still a shortage of houses. So things were better, but were they perfect? No. And that's it. Just a little bit of counter-argument. So when you come in to do an essay question, it's always good to give a little bit of balance. With those opinion lines we do in classes sometimes, as I say, it's never 100% one way or another. You should always show that there's a bit of balance. History is complicated, and you need to show you understand the complicated nature of history. Okay, brilliant. So this should all be highlighted now, and again, you should already have in the back of your mind whether you agree or not with this statement. On balance, do you think, yes, things were getting really good or was getting a lot better for the workers, or do you think on balance, no, things were getting worse? Okay, you should have that in the back of your head. Okay, this is the final section before we get onto the next kind of part of the process. So this is about culture. Culture can be thought of in a few ways, and I've done different sections here, as you can see, and there's images to kind of give you an idea of what they mean. So we've got art, like, you know, paintings, cinema, architecture, so that's like designing buildings, literature is, you know, books, writing books, cabaret and dance is kind of like theatre and entertainment. And then there's science. And this is a bit similar to what we just did before. Firstly, you have to read the information below. So it just says that all here, look. Read the information below and again, highlight the evidence that you think best supports the statement. So was it a golden age for culture? So highlight the stuff that you think that says yes to that. Again, you can't highlight everything here. And I really want you to think carefully. Out of this, if I just had to take a few bits of information, a few nuggets of knowledge that I could kind of drop into an essay, which bits would it be? It's a really important skill, being able to kind of decide which bits of information you want to take, because you're not going to be able to remember everything in the exam. So having little nuggets of knowledge that you can drop in is a really important skill. So this is what you're going to do here. So again, I'd have a green highlighter, ideally. And again, I would ideally like you to pause the video and do this independently. Again, you're just trying to read through each section, so art, cinema, architecture, and just try and take a little bit of knowledge, highlight the best bit that's going to support the argument that it was a golden age. Don't worry about the counter argument yet, the balancing off. Just what says, yes, this is a bit I would like to use in an exam. So pause the video now, please. Brill. If you'd like a little bit of guidance before you give it a go, as always, I've done a few for you. And this is what I've done. So I've done the first kind of 4. So art. Big takeaway, the big thing to remember is Germany was at the forefront, so that's right at the kind of the cutting edge of new styles and movements in art and design. Just say yes, art, they were right at the cutting edge of it. Cinema, well, Berlin became a world leader in cinema. Something called Metropolis, it's an amazing film, silent film. It's kind of like early science fiction. I recommend you watch it because it's absolutely fantastic. Might put a link onto it actually on the front page. Architecture. Now, again, they were at the forefront, so the Bauhaus became the leading centre for art and design. So it was like world-renowned. Interestingly, it was closed by the Nazis when they came to power in 1933 because it was just too radical. Remember, the Nazis are right-wing, they're conservatives, they want traditional values, and the Bauhaus was just too radical, too forward-thinking. Literature. Well, this period encouraged literature from both sides of the political spectrum, so both right and left. For me, that shows how kind of tolerant it had become. You didn't have the government trying to kind of suppress views. People had the opportunity to present their views, whatever they were. Even to the point, though I haven't highlighted it, that some were very critical of German democracy, but democracy allowed them to be critical. So it's a really interesting kind of a paradox, that is. Now, again, now you feel a bit more confident, hopefully, that you know what we're after. I'm not expecting loads of it highlighted. In fact, the risk is you highlight too much. So really try and focus on what you think is really important. So pause the video now if you feel a bit more confident about it. Well, so we're going to move on. I'll show you the last few that I've done. And here they are. So a little bit more in these last 2. Now, cabaret and dance. The Weimar government lifted censorship and it saw German cabaret transform and flourish. So this is kind of like, if everyone's seen the film Cabaret, it's quite a radical film. And importantly, even gay men and lesbians and transvestites who once feared to conceal their sexuality seized upon the liberal attitudes of the cabaret scene and they openly displayed their lives. So when I say even gay men and lesbians, you have to understand that before this and during this time, and even in Britain at this time, being gay was a crime. It was illegal. You would be arrested for it. And so in Weimar Germany at this time, quite rightly, they felt that they had the freedom, they should have the freedom to express who they were. So that's fantastic. And it really showed that it was a golden age. Of course, these people were kind of turned upon by the Nazis when they came into power, but for a short period, they were liberated. Now, science, Germany had the most educated population in Europe. Now, that is an astounding bit of information. The most educated population in Europe. They had international scientists, including Albert Einstein, arguably the most famous scientist of all time. Motor industry flourished. Achievements in communication occurred. They were at the forefront of scientific development. So some really important, bold bits of information there to support the statement that there was this golden age. Brilliant. So this should all be highlighted, or not all of it, but some of it. There is an extension, and it says this. Which of these sections, so art, cinema, architecture, literature, cabaret and dance, or science, do you think added most to the view that Germany was in a golden age? So what do you think is the most significant section that really points to, yes, this was a golden age? Now, there is no right or wrong answer here. You might think it's art or cinema. You might think it's the kind of the liberal attitudes. You might think it's the revolution in science. You know, Albert Einstein revolutionized science. You might think it's the political freedom of left and right literature. It's really up to you. There is no right or wrong answer. So for this, you could literally just kind of draw a big box around it. Now, if you want to, on your piece of paper, add a little note about why you've chosen this, or in your books, that's fine. This is more just about the thinking process. Which would you choose and why? So if you want to have a go at that, pause the video before we move on to the next step of the lesson. Okay, now, this is when we start to bring it all together, all your knowledge together, with the focus and aim of answering an exam question. So using all the information you've learned about this golden age, so copy, if you're doing it, hand by hand, you print it out, or cut and paste, if you've done it digitally, all the best bits of evidence to support the three categories below. So this is what it is. You need to fill in these boxes with the best bit of evidence to say, yes, this was a golden age. So you're only looking for the positive stuff, all the best bits, all the bits that when you wanted to write an essay, you needed evidence. This is the bits that you would use. So you put all those in there. So it'll look like this. So you'd have all this completed. So what in there, best bits of evidence for women that it was a golden age could you use? What about workers and like unemployment and pensions and all that? What is the best bit of evidence? Remember, you're only looking for stuff that supports it. And then culture, you can't put all of it in there. Which do you think you would like to use, which point to the best bits of evidence? So have a go at that now. So pause the video and complete this task. I'll talk about the balance bit at the moment and all this, so just complete these three boxes. And remember, you're just looking for the best bits. So pause the video now, please. Brilliant. Right. Hopefully, at this point, all of these are filled in with stuff. Okay, all of this is filled in with stuff. The next bit is you need to come up with a balanced argument. So when you're writing an essay, you need a little bit of information just to kind of give the counterpoint, just to balance it out. So in this bottom section, I just want you to think of bits of information you'd think you could show that it wasn't a 100% perfect golden age. So it might be things about how not all women or women still didn't get the best jobs, or that some men still resented women's freedom. Or it could be about how, yes, workers were really well off, but teachers and lawyers and civil servants, there was still mass unemployment with them. Culture is a bit more difficult. You might say, well, yes, culture, there was still loads of amazing things, but you might want to counter it by saying, however, we know this didn't last, and that when the Nazis came into power, they kind of took some of these freedoms away, whether it be Bauhaus or whether it be the freedom of one's own sexuality, for example. You don't have to write loads in here. It's just so you got a bit of balance. So again, pause the video now and just get a few nuggets of knowledge that help balance your argument. Good. Hopefully you now completed all of that table. Now, the final thing we do before our exam question is I just want you to make a judgment. So we're not doing an interpretation question today, but if you were, there might be an interpretation, one that says there was a golden age and one that says there wasn't. Remember, these interpretations are normally opposites. And I want you just to make a judgment call. Do you totally agree that, yes, there was a golden age? Or do you say, no, not at all? There wasn't a golden age at all. And I just want you to draw your mark, to draw a line. And as always, I don't want all of this is out of bounds. So not at all is out of bounds, totally agree is out of bounds, and in the middle is out of bounds, 50-50. You need to come down somewhere here, because it's unlikely you will ever totally agree with an interpretation, and it's unlikely you will ever totally disagree with an interpretation. And 50-50, I just hate it, because that's basically making no judgment at all. So again, pause the video and make your judgment. And it just needs to be drawn on this line. Good, I assume you've done that. Now we're just going to look at one more little bit of information for you. And you've got it here. Okay, was everyone happy about this? Well, no. Many Germans saw these new trends and cultures and they didn't like it. They thought it was a threat to their civilization, like the Western civilization, whatever that means. This is especially true from the right wing, because a lot of these new developments were associated with like the left-leaning communists and in intellectual circles, and actually a lot of Jews as well, though it doesn't say that here. They blamed the emergence of this new movement on the moral tolerance of this new republic. So actually the right wing, the Nazis and the nationalists, blamed the republic, the German government, for this kind of breakdown in what they saw morals. So not everyone was happy. And as we spoke about earlier, Nazis kind of wound back all these freedoms for women, for workers, for artists, for gay and lesbian men and women and transvestites, and all the other non-binaries in between. So not everyone was happy. Right, this is our final task. It says it's an extension task, but I would like everyone to at least give it a go, even if you just kind of think about an essay plan. But again, I really recommend you have a go at this. It'll be very beneficial, and it will be the last 12 marker you do before we get back in September. So you've got a long break ahead of you. The question is this, the one we looked at the start. Explain why the years 1924 to 29 are known as the golden age of the Weimar Republic. And always it gives kind of 2 bullet points that you may use. And note the word may, you don't have to use these. Living standards, cinema is what I've identified. But what it says you must do is you must also use information of your own. So you must use something beyond those 2 bullet points. And again, these could be used. So living standards is going to fall inside this workers section. Okay. Cinema is going to fall inside this culture section. Now, you might not have you might have decided, well, cinema isn't the most important section, so don't use cinema. You might think, actually, I've thought science and literature was the 2 bits I took down as the best bits. So instead of using cinema, you could just talk about them instead. Now, let me just show you what I've done. So these are a few like sentence starters to get you going. One reason 1924 to 29 is known as the golden age of the Weimar Republic was the fact that living standards increased. Note, in the very first sentence, I have answered the question directly. And I've used the question stem in my answer. Sounds like you're repeating yourself, but it's really important. Then I've said, for example, and this is when you use all your examples, all the stuff that comes here, all of the stuff that you've highlighted, all the best bits. So you can say, for example, unemployment fell by half from 4% to 2.15%. Also, another example is that those who were unemployed were given around 60 marks per week in unemployment and sickness benefit if they fell out of work. Furthermore, housing was improved with many new houses built, etc., etc. You can see where I'm going with this. Now, this shows that compared to before 1923, workers as well as pensioners were better off because And you talk about how they would have been better off. Maybe their employment's gone up, they're getting paid more, they're more secure. So if they're getting unemployment benefit and pensioners are getting sort of help, they're feeling better, they're feeling more secure. So it's all going good. Ooh, the second paragraph, so that'd be your whole first paragraph. And again, I used the question stem. Another reason that 1924 to 29 is known as the golden age of the Weimar Republic was the development of culture. Note, I haven't said cinema, I have used the initial theme, culture, because I recognise that cinema falls inside this. But I've used cinema as an example. For example, German cinema was, well, it says here, we know it was a world leader. So you could literally just use all this information and knowledge. Now, if you don't like to use cinema and you want to use one of the others because you think it's better or you know a bit more about it or you feel more confident of how to explain it, totally fine. And then the final reason, and again, using the question stem, that the 1924-29 is known as the golden age of the Weimar Republic. Sorry, there's a little typo there. Was, and I'm not going to tell you what to use, but considering that we've used culture and we've used workers, it's kind of only one of that you might want to use. Though you could split these into sort of subgroups, but I would just use the one we haven't done yet. So pause the video now, give this a go. Remember to use the stuff you've highlighted, use the stuff that you've put in those two boxes. Try to get at least something from here in, and like a however. It wasn't a perfect golden age. You could talk about how some women were treated, or you could talk about how the Nazis rolled back some of these changes after 1929. You could talk about how not everyone was, you still got mass unemployment. Yes, it's hard, but there's still lots of unemployment, and it began to rise again. So there's lots of things you could talk about. So pause the video now, please, and give it a go. Brilliant. Now, before we finish, let me just explain two things. Firstly, next week there will be another lesson set. However, this is a kind of a consolidate or extension lesson for those who have not come into school, or for those who have finished everything and actually feel they want to extend or consolidate. So for those who have come into school, you've had a week in school, but some of you have not come into school, so you kind of got a week free. So if you didn't come into school, I do expect you to do the consolidation extension lesson that will be set in the final week. If you have come into school, you're not expected to do it, though if you want to extend or consolidate your knowledge, then obviously feel free. The final thing I want to just mention is what we will be going on to in September, and it will be this individual. All of you will know who this is, and I've taken pictures from across his life, from his earliest time all the way through to his most kind of evil and powerful position as the leader of the German Reich. We will be looking at the development of the Nazi Party. We will be looking at the early attempt at taking over the government, something known as the lean years when people weren't interested, and eventually how they took control and consolidated their power. So I will leave you on that terrifying, glaring face. Any questions, email your teachers. As always, keep well, work hard, and enjoy.